Hello, everyone. I'm Traci Arieli, end-of-life doula and founder of Comforting Closure. Welcome to another episode. I want to talk to you about someone very special to me. His name is Sherbert, and he is one of our cats. He loves snuggling and being pet. We've traveled with him. Last winter, we took him to a lighthouse where he befriended the entire staff, and he's been invited back. He's very social, and he is one of the loves of my life. Being an end-of-life doula, I've seen what happens when people get seriously ill and there's no plan for their pets. When I work with people who have pets, it's one of their top concerns. I know I wouldn't want Sherbert or any cat to end up in a shelter. Oren and I have had discussions with our family and our friends, and we've planned financially to care for our cats if we go first. Too often people don't have a plan, and pets are left vulnerable. Today, we'll talk about what can go wrong, what can go right, and how you can prepare. I'm joined by Christy Bork, National Program Manager at Pet Peace of Mind. So grab a
Thank you
warm
for having
drink,
me.
find a comfortable seat, and join us for the conversation. Christy, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
So before we begin, or actually as we begin, I want to talk about you. How did you come into this work?
Well, I had known about Pet Peace of Mind for quite some time. So I have a lot of friends in the veterinary community. And so they had talked about this awesome charity. And I had watched videos and read stories. And when a position came available in the organization, I thought it would be a perfect fit. That was 8 years ago. And I have just fallen in love with the mission. It is a really special gift. I think it's a gift to give to patients who are at the end of life, to assure them that there is someone who will not only ensure that their pet can stay with them through their end of life journey, but knowing that they have a new home to go to afterwards. And so, um, like I said, I've been doing it for 8 years and I just love what I do. I love our mission. It's really special.
That's wonderful. So, Pet Peace of Mind, it not only makes sure that the person and their pet, they remain together wherever they are. Um,
Right, right. So a lot of people think that this is just for hospice houses, but 90% of hospice care is provided in people's own homes. And so our program, our first mission or our first part of our mission is to ensure that pets get to stay with their people. So no one should have to give up the comfort, the companionship, the love of their pet because they can't care for them any longer. So that's the first goal. And then the second goal is to make sure that the pet has a new home to go to after the person passes. And for a lot of people, they have family members who can take the pets, and that's just great. But there are people who their pet is their only companion, really. Um, and so they're really worried about what's going to happen to that pet. And even in cases where there is family involved, often they can't take the pets for a variety of reasons. Maybe they have a lot of pets themselves and they don't have room for anymore, or they financially couldn't care for them, or their pets don't get along with other pets. There's a lot of reasons why family members can't take them. And so that causes a lot of anxiety for patients. They want to know that their pet is going to be cared for and loved. And people have really strong bonds with their pets. And they, for pet lovers, they're family. And so I say this often uh, when hospices on board with us and when they decide to take on our program, they are really completing their circle of care because their care includes family and pets are family. So it's, like I said, I'll probably say this 10 times. It's a lovely gift to give someone.
and so you work directly with the hospice. Do you work with individuals too, or is it mainly through hospices that you're partnering with? And how many
Yes,
hospices? I know you're in the Bay Area, correct?
we are. We have So let me answer the first part of that question. We only partner with hospices. So they run the program through like behind their walls. It's just like any other patient service initiative that they have, whether that is respite care, music therapy, pet therapy, which is different from what we do. Uh, but we partner with them. We give them all the tools they need to run the program, but then they use their volunteers to execute it. So basically, what we're providing is expertise, intellectual property, uh, a lot of hospices are kind of doing ad hoc pet programs where their nurses, their social workers go into the homes. They see that there's a pet that maybe a dog needs to be walked or the cat litter needs to be changed, and they end up doing that. And that takes away time that they can really be spending with the patient. And most of them are very happy to do so. But the hospices are looking for a really streamlined process which they can put into place, and that's what we provide them, all the tools they need. So it is turnkey, and they can we train them, they train their volunteers, and then the program just evolves from that. So we started this in 2009. The pilot program was in 2008. That was before my time. And now we have over 325 hospice partners across the United States. So we continue to grow. And I mean, that's one of our goals is to get our program into as many hospices as we can, because that means we can help more pets and more patients. And it's a really neat program.
It's very different because I know a lot of different programs, they work with actual families or with the individual. Um, and this was it was a very conscious decision to just work with hospice.
Yes. So when our founder started this program, she talked to a lot of people within the veterinary community, a lot of people within just the basic animal welfare community, but also with hospices, because that's how it came up. Um, someone had a family member who was dying and no one could take their cat. And so they were going through all the resources, and there were no resources out there. So that's how this kind of evolved. When they did the focus groups and they talked to the different hospices, the hospices said, we want to run this program. We want our volunteers to do the work. We want to control who's going in to see our patients, just HIPAA concerns, etc. And I think that was the best way to do it. We do get phone calls from people and emails from people who are not in hospice, and their loved ones maybe are sick or have recently passed away, and they're searching, right? So there's a need out there beyond us. But it would be pretty difficult for me to have a national band of volunteers and just deploy them to any city in the United States. It would be pretty hard to do it that way. I mean, I'm sure there are groups in select cities throughout the United States who have those types of organizations, but ours is more broad and is meant to, like I said, is meant to be run through the hospice using their volunteers. And for anyone who's not familiar with how hospice works, in order to become funded by Medicare, 5% of all patient service hours need to be volunteer hours. And so programs like Pet Peace of Mind can be used towards that 5% Medicare requirement. So that's a nice side benefit for the hospices. Again, it's no different from any other patient service that they have.
So the training that you provide to the hospice, do you go in there and is it the training to the hospice and the volunteers? So you're there training both of them and then the hospice can do additional trainings or?
Well, I mainly train the volunteer coordinators.
Okay.
So the person in the hospice who manages all the volunteers for all their different programs. I train them, first of all, on the basics of pet peace of mind, including on like what type of volunteers work best, because you want volunteers who have broad pet care experience. You know, cat people can pretty much take care of all types of cats, but dogs are breed specific, right? Sometimes some are harder than others. And so it's really helpful to know to recruit like vet techs or groomers or people who have worked in doggy daycares. They see tons of different breeds every day. They know how to handle them. That keeps everyone safe. So that's one of our main priorities is how do you do this safely and avoid, and um, scratches or bites or runaways. So we give our partners very clear guidelines on how to recruit, who to recruit, how the program works. We have a training that's all about rehoming. So, because that's new to them, they're not, um, most people haven't rehomed a pet before. So, again, recruiting volunteers who have either worked or volunteered at some rescue or shelter. It's all about getting the right types of volunteers. And then we also train our partners on how to market their program.
Hmm.
Uh, some of our partners do provide financial assistance for their patients' pet care costs. It's not a requirement of our program, but I'd say probably half of the programs do so. And they raise a lot of money to pay for vet bills, for grooming, all those things that kind of fall by the wayside when you get sick, right? You stop bringing your pet to be groomed. You stop bringing your pet to the vet. And there's different reasons. Sometimes it's physically you can't do those things anymore. And sometimes it's financial because your illness has changed your financial situation. And so there's a variety of ways that the hospice and the Pet Peace of Mind program can support these people. But before I get into that, I want to finish answering your question. Um, they, I train the hospice volunteer coordinator. I give them a PowerPoint presentation that they can use to train their own volunteers. Now, if they have a lead volunteer who's going to really manage the program and run it with them, they often attend my training as well. But we kind of have it separated out because the people who actually are doing the heavy lifting of the program are the volunteers, and they need to be trained on different things, on um, like things that you would think are common sense, like transporting a pet. We want everyone to be safe, and uh, lots of people just put their dog in the front seat of their car, and I have been guilty of that in the past. But if you're transporting someone else's animal or pet, it should be in a crate
Yeah.
for safety. So very common sense training things for volunteers, whereas for the hospice itself, it's more broad and we cover a lot more topics.
Do you ever have hospice houses that partake in this when people are actually living and dying at the hospice house, but they want their pets there also? Do you help out with that, or is that more?
So, yeah, absolutely. So it depends on the hospice and what their policies are, whether some hospice houses do allow pets to stay overnight. And others don't. And so, what we recommend in the cases where a pet isn't allowed to stay is to have a volunteer bring the pet in at least once a week for a visit. And that is, it's really beautiful. It makes a huge difference, not only to the patient, they're missing their pet, right? And but it helps for the pets too, because pets grieve. And it's it's really nice for both of them to be able to say goodbye to each other. So yeah, we have I can't say enough good things about our volunteers. They really go the extra mile to make sure those moments happen for their patients. We have one patient who she moved in with her son, and her son had two dogs, and so they didn't get along with other dogs. So she couldn't keep her dog. And so the Pet Peace of Mind team found a new home for the dog, with her permission, of course. And but she, she misses her own dog. And once a month, she goes to the hospice house for a weekend for respite care. So her son gets a break from his caregiving duties. And on those weekends that she goes to the hospice house, the volunteer brings her dog in to visit. See him and love on him. And it means the world of difference to her, and it's good for her dog too.
Now, I have volunteered with hospice, and I know that there is, even as a volunteer, I do get attached to the person I'm helping, and it's difficult, I could see that if there was a pet introduced with that um, attachment would even grow more for me personally, because I am
Yeah.
such an animal lover. Self-care. I'm sure there has to be some component of training for these volunteers, especially with pets, when they're helping
I
pets.
think to be a hospice volunteer is a very special person, just in general. And the hospices do a really good job on training them on boundaries. And it's usually a full day training or more to become a
Yes.
hospice volunteer. And then if you're a Pet Peace of Mind volunteer, you get a little extra training as well on the pet side of things. I have heard lots of stories where the volunteers end up
Foster failures, is that what we're saying?
and even I will even say that some of the smaller hospices that come on board with us, they come on board because all their employees have adopted their patients' pets. And you get to a certain point where there's like you have 5 pets and you're like, I I can't take any more. But I think the hospice employees and the volunteers, they form those connections with people, and they form the connections with their pets. And so that is natural. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's completely okay with us if everyone's, in alignment that a volunteer or an employee can definitely adopt a person's pet. It's just not sustainable on a long-term basis. And that's why they come to us, right? I kind of talked about that earlier. Having a streamlined process in place on how to take care of pets and how to rehome them is very helpful.
Yeah, the
And that's
rehoming
that
is really,
knowledge.
I think that the rehoming would be the most difficult part of the whole process.
It's a lot of people, that is where the most part of their anxiety comes from, is what's going to happen to my pet after I'm gone. Is someone going to love them? Or are you going to find a new home for them? And I have heard from so many volunteer coordinators that the patients pass, like they hold on until they know their pet has a new home to go to. And then they pass away like 15 minutes later.
Yeah.
Because they're just relieved and they're able to let go. And even it's people are just so worried about their pets. But there's one story that really struck me. This was a few years ago. This gentleman was admitted to hospice. It was an emergency admittance over the weekend.
Mm.
He had his, his dog with him is a little Chihuahua named Cricket. And that's all he could talk about was what was going to happen to Cricket. And so this hospice was part of a larger medical organization, healthcare system. And so they sent out an urgent plea to all of their employees saying, we've got this little Chihuahua, needs a new home, gave all the details. And one of their employees stepped right up and she said, sight unseen, she would adopt Cricket. And so they told this gentleman that we have a new home for Cricket. She's going to be fine. And 15 minutes later, he passed away with Cricket curled up on his chest. And that's all he needed, to let go. And that story was actually pretty cool because she ended up falling in love with Cricket. She wrote a story about like how the adoption affected her life. And then about a year later, she transferred to a new position within the healthcare system. And it was actually to the role of the volunteer coordinator for hospice.
Hmm.
And then she ended up running the Pet Peace of Mind program for her hospice. And it just really neat. It came full circle.
That is really neat. When I go in as a doula and I'm helping people plan, of course, when I see that they have a pet, we talk about it. But, like estate planning, people just don't, like my husband and I, it's pretty well spelled out that Sherbert and Shara, they're going to be pretty well set.
Right.
If we go,
you've got a plan for them.
Yeah. And like we've taken into account Sherbert has ear problems so that he's going to have, if he has surgery, how much will he need? Like we've done the math, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do people overlook their pets?
I don't know. You're definitely in the minority of people who do that. And I think that people think about their kids, right? They make their wills, they talk about their assets. And I think people just assume that they will outlive their pets. And that's not always the case. And I think it's a topic that needs to be discussed like more. Probably 6 years ago, I redid all my estate planning, and my attorney never asked about my pets. And my pets were pretty old at the time. I had 2 dogs at that time, and I was fairly sure I was going to outlive them, and my kids would have taken them had I not. But yeah, attorneys don't factor that in very often. I mean, there are some that do, but for the most part, they kind of just forget about the pets. And then when there's, when someone gets sick, there's so much else going on. So we get a lot of calls from people in crisis that aren't on hospice and whose loved one has just passed away and they don't know what to do with the pet. And waiting that long makes it harder. It makes it harder for the people who are left behind to find a place for your pet. No one wants their pet to end up in a shelter. There's a lot of great shelters and rescues out there, and we partner with them when we're looking for homes for our patients' pets. Our philosophy is not to just drop the pet off at a shelter because that's what causes the anxiety for people, right? But we can work together and share resources, get the pet's profile put up on, like a local rescue or shelter's website. So they're very accommodating, right, to work with us. But the shelters are at capacity across the United States. So their resources are limited as well. So if people can make a plan, that is, if they can designate a pet care guardian for their pet, that makes a world of difference. And I know we've talked about this, but we get so many calls like that. And so we created my pet placement plan, and it's a free download on our website. It's more geared for people like you and me, right? Who aren't sick, who aren't at end of life, but who want a plan for their pet. And it's, you get to name your guardian, you get to put all your pet's information in one place. If they have special food, if, all their vaccinations are up to date, all the things that someone would need to take care of your pet. Uh, and then you just add that, you have it, you sign it in front of a notary, and then you add it to your other estate planning documents for when you need to use it. But, and there's a lot of reasons even temporary guardians might be necessary. A lot of people limit their own health care because they don't have anyone to take care of their pets. So they put off, hospitalizations or procedures, because there's a lot of people out there who just don't have a support system. So it is very important to make a plan, make sure your loved ones know what your plan is. And like what you've done, setting aside money for your pets, I mean, that's incredible.
We never thought about it because we had relatively healthy cats
Yeah.
Okay. So who got sick only when they were old, kidney disease or whatever. And we knew how to take care of them, but we never really thought about that until Sherbert came walking in. We opened the door one day and he just walked into our home. He was a stray, just walked in and he's like, yeah, this is my home now. But he had an ear infection and a year of going to doctors. We had to go see a specialist and then major surgery on his ears. And he might need another one, hopefully not. But, we never thought about that. But that expense, not many people are willing to take on an expense like that. Right. And so it's like, okay, how do we make sure that he's okay if God forbid something happens to us? How do we, so that's why we did it.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Bravo.
As I'm just looking at him, he's walking around. So if people are watching this and she's like, what is she laughing at? What is she smiling? Well,
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So and it's so interesting. Like I wouldn't have initially thought about people needing that extra help as they are getting sicker, not even in hospice, but, in order to, because when you do get sick, that illness takes away from everything. It really does. Your day-to-day life is so different.
And the volunteers, they get really creative on ways to help. Like I have one gentleman who he only has his dog. And so he is most worried about what will happen to her. And so his Pet Peace of Mind team, they did find a new home. So when he passes away, the dog, he's met the family, and approved, and he was part of the decision-making process, which is great. But in addition, for him, what brings him comfort is he wants someone from his hospice team to call him every single morning to make sure that he's alive. And he's not doing it for himself. He doesn't want his dog to miss one meal. So he wants, if he dies, then they will know right away, and the volunteers will come over and get his dog and bring him to the new house, the new family that will adopt him or her. I think that in that case, it's a her. But anyway, they do just amazing things. I have another group where I could tell you stories all day, but there's a group of 5 women who are taking care of this dog for this gentleman. So his wife was on hospice and she passed away. And so he's got kids and, everything, but his day-to-day companionship is his dog, and he's in his early 90s. He is not on hospice care, he's on palliative care.
Hmm.
But the hospice provides that, the whole organization. So their Pet Peace of Mind volunteers will help with him too. So there's a group of 5 ladies, and one of them goes over to his house every single day to walk the dog. And he's able to let the dog out to do his business, throughout the day, but the dog needs to be walked. And so every single day, and this has been going on for, I bet, a year and a half. One of these ladies goes over, they take, the dog's name is Max. They take Max on his daily walk, and then they come in and they sit down with his dad and they talk to him. And he gets companionship from the volunteers as well. And his family just wrote the most glowing recommendation, or, just report about these ladies. This was actually a year ago. They were nominated for our Pet Peace of Mind Volunteer of the Year award, and they won because they really go above and beyond. And the family had written in saying they should win this award. And just, they said, I don't know who gets more out of it, the dog or our dad, because he looks forward, he's happy because the dog's being cared for, but he also gets that daily interaction too. So everyone's winning, and he knows that the dog will have a home to go to when he passes, but he's doing great.
So we've talked about dogs and cats. Do you take care of other little furry friends or even scaly friends?
Yeah. So it kind of, each of our programs can run their Pet Peace of Mind program how it best fits. And often that depends on the types of volunteers they have. But if they have volunteers who are experienced and willing to take care of other animals besides dogs and cats, people form strong bonds with any type of animal. So in our rural areas, we have volunteers who are feeding horses. There's been plenty of birds that have been helped through our program. Birds live a really long life, like 30 plus years.
Yes.
So most bird people know that, and they have made plans for their pets.
Turtles. Oh,
but
boy.
not always. So.
And so on your website, do you have like a list of hospices that have received the training? Because personally for me, that's one of the things I look for in a hospice.
Yes. So, yes, we do have the list on our website. And then if a person was on hospice care, usually their hospice team, meets with them and asks them what types of services they would like. And then they make referrals to the volunteer coordinator. And it's usually the nurses and the social workers who are educating the patients and the families about the services they have, including Pet Peace of Mind. And, and then you can tell when you walk into a patient's home if there's a strong bond with their pet. So maybe the dog is in bed with the patient, or the cat's on their lap, or even you go into people's homes and they have framed pictures of their pets. You know that there's a strong bond, right?
Yes.
I definitely have pictures like that in my house. And so then they just start that conversation, and tactfully, like, do you have a plan for your pet after you're gone? And is that something you'd like help with? And then they make that referral for the services. And for some people, they don't use every single element of the Pet Peace of Mind program. Maybe they just need help finding a new home for their pet when the time comes. And then some patients need help with the walking of the dogs, or, like I said, changing the cat litter, or transporting pets to and from doctors, veterinary visits or grooming appointments. So there's a lot of different services that we can provide based on the patient's needs. And then within each hospice program, it's based upon the volunteers they have at the time. So sometimes those services can change depending on who's running the program or who the volunteers are. But most of those basic services are offered everywhere.
Are there any limitations? Something that you're like, no, we shouldn't be doing that, or hospices, this is like a line.
I can't think of an instance where we would, the only time we would turn down a referral would be if we didn't have a volunteer or who could safely do that. I guess the only other limitations would be sometimes, and I never ever thought of this before I was in this line of work, but sometimes when people are at the end of life, they think that no one can care for their pet or love their pet as much as they do. And they want the pet euthanized when they pass. And that's a hard no from us. And there's no reason to put down a healthy pet because their human has passed away. And so I do train our new partners on, that they might get that type of request because it does happen more often than you would think. And what I suggest to our partners, if that becomes a request, it lends itself to a conversation, maybe with a bereavement counselor who can talk through the anxieties that the patient is having and assure them that there's a lot of really good people out there and that they will find someone who will love their pet and take care of their pet. So that's probably the only thing that we would say no to. And sometimes there's hoarding situations, which would also not be it wouldn't be an appropriate referral to the Pet Peace of Mind program because our average volunteer doesn't know how to handle a hoarding situation. And in that case, I would defer to like the Humane Society because they have people who deal with those types of situations on a much more frequent basis. But other than that, as long as we have a volunteer who has experience, we're happy to help in any way we can.
So let's talk about what healthy individuals can do right now just to make sure that their pet is okay. I know we touched upon this when we talked about estate planning, but because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know. I could break my leg, or I could, we just don't know. What can healthy people do today to plan for these unknowns and the eventualities that will happen?
I think just having all your pet information in one place and having a trusted friend or family member that could take your pet, either permanently if that's necessary or temporarily. Because like to your point, you could break your leg and not be able to take care of your pet the same way. If you have a high energy dog, you wouldn't be able to walk it. So just having someone in your back pocket that you can count on to help you take care of your pet in those types of circumstances, I think that's really the best they can do. There are a lot of services out there, but you have to pay for them, right? So that's a barrier for some people. There's a lot of, wonderful boarders or services where people come into your home. That's kind of the beauty of Pet Peace of Mind. Of course, it's not for healthy people, it's for people at end of life, but no one pays for our services. So that is, which people don't pay for other hospice services either, whether that's having someone come in and sit with them at end of life. A lot of hospices have the program No One Dies Alone, that there's always someone sitting by their side, or um, there's just so many great hospice programs that they don't charge for. They're run by the volunteers, and that's what Pet Peace of Mind is too. If you're healthy, there's not so many services out there, so you have to make a plan. And to your point, it's not just getting sick or having a terminal diagnosis. It's just life. It could be a natural disaster. It could be, you're displaced from your home. People don't want to, um, in like domestic violence situations, they don't want to go in, leave because they don't want to leave their pets, or they can't take their pets with them. Um, Veterans too often don't want, to go into the hospital or have procedures done because they have no one to watch their pets. So we're filling one niche of this whole problem. It's a much bigger problem, a much broader problem, I would say.
I know that when I work with people on their end of life plans, and when we're documenting, we document things like their doctors, their, any bank accounts they have, any, what are the passwords to their utility company, to their social media. But when we work with work on the pet section, then it's who are their vets? What kind of health issues? What kind of food issues? Does your
Yes.
dog or cat not like certain types are they finicky? Are they, do they like to be, are there certain places they don't want to be pet? What games do they like? Like, we go through everything that would make that life easier for that dog or cat is, if a transition has to happen, what are the things that would make that pet more comfortable?
It's easier to do that before you're sick.
Yes.
Too, right? It's easier to get all that into place. Even if you are on hospice, I tell our partners, have those conversations as soon as you can before someone is so sick that they can't respond. Because they know their pets the best. They know what type of home is going to be best. Can the pet be around other animals, or can it be around small children? Or a lot of people rescue pets and they've been in, scary situations. And so they have fears, the pets have fears. Maybe they can't be around men, or, just there's a lot of different factors. And so if you get that down on paper, then whoever's helping you with the next step can find the right home for your pet on the first try, most likely, right? And so we have, forms for our hospice partners to use so they can have these types of conversations with their patients and fill out the forms and have everything in one place. On my pet placement plan for just pet owners in general, when they're filling this out, that's important as well. And that's covered in that document. It's a pretty comprehensive document. It's probably 6 pages long and asks pretty much every question that's important, for someone else to know about your pet. And it's not only medical, it's behavioral as well.
It's longer than many advanced directives. I just want you to know that.
Probably is.
So, one last question. I know people are very concerned about who takes care of their pet after they like. How should people approach a conversation with someone that they're asking to take their pet? That's a difficult conversation to have, right?
It is. It is. And I think that there's a couple things. You have to lay it all out there, like in your case, like you have money set aside. I think explaining everything is important. It's it's one of those conversations, you hope that you'll never have to follow through it with, right? You hope that you're gonna outlive your pet. I think you just have to be really open and honest with the person and say, um, and ask them in return to be honest with you. Because if they think they can't fulfill your wishes. So that's one thing that we see. Often children, adult children, will tell their parents who are on hospice, I will take your pet. Don't worry about it. Because they don't want their parents, to be worried and have that anxiety. And then the person passes away, and then the family members tell the hospice team, yeah, we're not going to take that pet. And you're just like, what? And we need time, right? We need time to find the right home for this pet. So having these conversations earlier rather than later is so important. But the reason I say that all is because you do have to tell your family members or your friends, be honest with me. If this is something you cannot, um, if you cannot do or don't want to do, then let me move on to someone else.
Yeah.
So I think it has to just be a really honest conversation on both ends. Oh,
Yeah. I lied to you. I do have one last question.
okay. Yeah.
So, what role do you think the professionals have? And when I look at professionals, I'm talking about the estate attorneys, the doulas like me, even vets. Like, what role should they play in this?
I think just getting people thinking, right? Um, I think it'd be great if vets talked to their patients and said, hey, start thinking about if something was ever to happen to you. Not that we think or assume that something is going to happen. Could be someone really young, but start thinking about a plan for your pet. Don't let it take you by surprise if you have a crisis. So I think if vets did that, if I think doulas, you're already meeting with people who are
End of life.
ill,
Yeah.
right? Or have some type of diagnosis, having that conversation right away so there is enough time to make that plan. And then I wish that all attorneys included pet planning in their estate planning. And I think it's becoming more common, but there's a ways to go on that. I think it would be just wonderful if that was just part of it. And we work with shelters and rescues where uh, we're sharing my pet placement plan with them, and we have little window clings that they can put in, up in their, like in vet clinics. They could put them in their exam rooms, and then there's some rescues and shelters who use our QR code, and they put them in all their adoption packets, just
Smart.
saying, you know, just get that conversation started. Um, you don't want your pet to end up in a shelter, and here's how you can prevent it. And I think, most people, they don't want their pet to end back up in a shelter. So, but you have to plan for it.
Wonderful. Well, Christy,
Trust, right?
ex- exactly. Christy, thank you so much for being on the show and for all the work you do. I really appreciate it. For people that are listening and they want to know more about Pet Peace of Mind, or I know that you accept donations. You have a donation page. Where can they find more information and where can they donate?
Yep. It's petpeaceofmind.org, and there's a donate button. We are a national nonprofit. The way we keep our doors open is through grants and individual donations. And it's it's again, I just can't say enough good things about it. I know I work for the organization, but it is a really meaningful way to support pets and to support people as well, people who are in a really difficult time of their life. So yeah, we would welcome all the support we could get, whether that's volunteering with a local program or donating finances. We've been doing this since 2009, and we want to, like I said, expand to as many hospices as we can so we can serve more patients and more pets. And we just appreciate all of our wonderful supporters that we have now. But
Wonderful. Thank you again.
I
Listeners,
appreciate you talking about this. It's so important to have the conversation. So thank you so much for having me on.
you're welcome. Listeners, I want you to think about your own life and the animals in it. They're not just pets, they're part of your family. They rely on you for everything, for safety, for routine, for care, for love. If something were to happen, would there be a clear path for them? Would the person you have in mind know what to do and be ready to step in? Taking the time to think and talk it through can make a real difference for the people you love and for the animals who depend on you. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please comment below or reach out to me directly. And if you found this conversation to be helpful, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is Traci Arieli from Comforting Closure, wishing you peace and comfort in your journey. Until next time, take care.